this Plan Commission meeting of May 7th. If you've not been here before, please, first of all, turn off your cell phones so that they don't interfere with conversation. And the way things work is I will introduce an item, then the staff will give staff comments on the item. The Plan Commission will then ask technical questions, and after the technical questions are finished, then we open it up to the public. And when it's your turn to speak, come to that podium, state your name and address, and give your opinions. When all have finished with the public comments, then we will return it back to the Plan Commission for discussion and a vote. Please call the roll.
Thomas Wojtek, Kathleen Propp,
Here?
Ed Bowen, Michael Ford,
Here.
John Hintz,
Present.
John Kiefer, Lori Palmieri,
Here.
Thomas Perry,
Here.
Robert Weigart,
Here.
Andrew Mott, Derek Gross.
Thank you. Welcome, by the way, to Mayor Lori Palmieri, a new member. The next item is approval of the April 16th minutes. What's your pleasure?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, first item is commercial design standards variance to allow an addition not substantially similar to the original building at 2300 Algoma Boulevard.
Thank you. So this item is a design standards variance request for work that was done at 2300 Algoma. Kind of get here to the subject site. You can see it in blue there. It is zoned urban mixed use, UMU. It's right on the corner of Algoma and Winchester. So it is, reasonably prominent there. And we'll get into where the addition is that we're talking about. But you can see Riverside Cemetery is to the west. There's some multifamily to the east. And then there's some single and two family, I think, further to the east there. You can see some urban mixed use. I think some of these are residential to the north and south. Some mixed-use properties there to the south, too. Here is an aerial of the subject site. You can just kind of get a sense of the main building here that we'll take a look at in a minute, the addition that's on the back of that, and we'll talk about that. And then there's a lot of green space and parking taking up a lot of the site footprint there. Here is a image looking down Winchester to the east, I believe. So if you're standing with the subject site on the left and then looking at some of the context here, just kind of getting a sense of some of the landscaping, the trees, and some of the surrounding context there. And then this is looking towards Algoma here, so looking west towards the cemetery there. Here is our site on the right there. So looking the opposite direction from before, and then you can see, the scale of, a lot of these are two-story buildings here. Here are some images of the building in question. So you can see, essentially, planning services staff sent a correction notice early last year for this addition that is back here. And then there was a fence also that was part of that notice, but the addition in question, or this overhang structure, I should say, was put on, and no permits were obtained. There was no permit on file in our records, so staff sent a correction notice. There was a little bit of back and forth between staff and the property, the applicant, about this, and it took a little bit of a time period, a lot of time passed, and then finally, they applied for design standards variance for this overhead here, or awning here, overhead there, structure. So that's what we're looking at. You can see it's reasonably far away from Winchester there, which is the closest street. It's probably 130, 140 feet away, so you can see it. It is partially screened by this, I think, 6-foot high chain link fence with vinyl slats in there. So it does help screen it a little bit, but it is there and reasonably prominent. The applicant stated that a primary purpose for this awning is because they are a dog daycare. So to allow the dogs to go outside, allow them some shelter during the winter months or inclement weather, rain, snow events. They can go outside for a little bit, and this helps shelter them. So that is primarily why they wanted to put this on and why they're asking to maintain it. So it kind of helps cover a little bit of that area that's underneath there. And right now it is constructed of wood, and they've got some corrugated metal roofing over it. Here's some, so the site plan showing it. It's about a 29-foot by 14-foot structure. It does extend out into the vacated former right-of-way here. So that does have some implications. There are some ramifications that we'll address in a minute. But you can see its position on the back of the building. So it is partially shielded from view, at least from Winchester. You can see it as you're coming from the east there. If you're going towards Algoma, you can get a glimpse of it. But then it is shielded from view by Algoma too, or from Algoma by the building, I should say. This image is a little bit blurry, but you can see corrugated metal is specified there for the roof. And then there's 2x4s that are currently exposed to support that roof, and then there are some 4x4 posts or columns that support that structure. Currently, those are untreated. The code reference, because we like to make sure that people are aware of why we're here. This reference basically that we have to account for in the standards is that all additions to an existing building essentially shall match or be substantially similar to the design and materials of the existing building. The existing building is a stone building. I don't know if I had a really good image of it, but it is, you can kind of get a sense of, some of the stone cladding there. There's some glazing. I don't have, unfortunately, the best image from Algoma, but it's reasonably attractive. It's not a poor looking building for what it is. Former industrial, now commercial building on that site. I think it was built back in the 20s, according to the assessor webpage. So a little while back. But then they added this on, and because we as staff felt that it was not materially similar, substantially similar in appearance, we wanted them to come for a design standards variance. So we talked about it as staff. We looked at it. We discussed it with the property owner, with the applicant. So we had some conversation with both of them. And we would recommend approval of the design standards variance to allow this overhang structure. But we did have a number of conditions for this. We did talk to the Department of Public Works, and because that structure extends into the vacated right-of-way, they would need to have an encroachment agreement on file between the property owner and the city because that structure extends. So a condition of approval, one of them would be that this encroachment agreement shall be obtained by the property owner. I did check with the property owner because the applicant and the owner are different. The owner did confirm via email that he had no problem with obtaining that agreement and working with us. The second condition is that within 6 months of variance approval, an appropriate landscaping plan shall be submitted to the Department of Community Development for our review. And what we're looking at for that is this area. So trying to screen this fence a little bit, some kind of landscaping. They did say in their application that they were open to doing some kind of landscaping. So we wanted to see something there. The fence helps screen this structure, but we'd like to see some landscaping, something to break that up. And, it's not the most attractive right now. So we did want something in terms of that submitted. And then the third is that within 6 months of variance approval, acceptable labeled elevations or detail drawings showing a finished condition. Because right now, like I mentioned, the fascia is 2x4 wood, and it's not finished, it's not sheathed by anything, it's not covered. We want to see them either sheath it in, some kind of water-resistant material, something, because we feel that otherwise you get issues with rain and water infiltration. That wood there may be issues with that. So we want some kind of finished condition submitted, something reasonably attractive. Our primary concern is maintenance of that long term. And then also submitting building plans to the inspections division within 6 months, because inspections did ask for a little bit more detailed plans than what was submitted. just showing how this thing goes together and how it looks, in terms of details and how it stands. And then the last condition would be that the petitioner or owner shall stain or paint the exterior wood supports. Again, we just want to see that finished, and then ensure that the structure as a whole is maintained. And then, actually forgot this one, sorry about that. The last condition is pretty standard, one that we've been putting on, that any additional work involving the exterior of the property and deviating from the base standards of the zoning ordinance shall be filed as separate requests and come through here in the future. We found that the variance, in our opinion, would not be contrary to the public interest.
Okay, thank you. I forgot to ask if there were any site inspections, and I will say that I had a couple of site inspections. And then I am going to accept the staff report as part of the record. I should have done that first. Now, technical questions to the staff, and no opinions in this, just technical questions. Anybody have? John?
Actually, I just wanted to know if we could pull it up on Google Street View, just so we could actually see what it looks like now,
Yeah, we can do that.
because no actual pictures close out.
North.
Yep.
Keep going.
There it is. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
the side view of that overhang there.
Wasn't really seeing
Okay.
the wood from the other, the drawings and stuff, so I just kind of wanted to put in perspective what we're asking here.
Yep.
Any other technical questions? Right now? Okay, if not, I'll open it up to the public comment, and the first item, if the applicant is asked to speak first, if they wish.
Good afternoon, I'm Carmen Scott, and I'm an employee over at New Possibilities, and I met with Jim Deering, the owner, this morning. We went over the conditions. We already have volunteer crew, and we already think that we've got some fundraising in place to do everything that is needed, so we're all set to go.
All right.
Any questions?
I have a question
Yes.
about the outdoor storage of, looks like dog crates, right next to the fence.
That was a temporary, so the dogs are transported from Kentucky every 2 weeks, so they just came in. So when you're looking at that, they're not permanent there. So they move them when the dogs come in, and then they remove them into our garage.
Oh, okay, so maybe by tomorrow, the crates will be in the garage.
I hope so. I do know that on this Saturday, we've got a work crew coming in to take everything out of that garage and storage and do thorough cleaning. So they could be out there now for that reason as well. But they typically don't live there.
Okay, I'm just bringing that up because I think outdoor storage is not appropriate.
Yeah.
And I would just flag that. But
Yeah.
anyway, any other questions for the applicant? None, right?
Okay, thank
very
you.
much. Anybody else from the audience that wants to speak on this item? Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, back to the commission. She's just given her closing statement, so I guess there's no other statement. I would ask for a commission action, a motion to adopt the findings and recommendation as stated in the staff report.
Make that motion.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All right, now discussion. Anybody? Well, I have a comment. This overhang is ugly, but there are similar colors on it to the building, so I can go with the staff finding if the staff is okay. And I already talked about the outdoor storage, so. Nothing else? Call the roll, please.
Bowen.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Hintz.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Harry.
Aye.
Weigart.
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay. Next item is a public hearing. A zone change from institutional district to institutional district with planned development overlay, and approval of a general development plan and specific implementation plan for building additions at 913 Nebraska Street. And before we start, were there any site inspections? I did one. Okay, at least 3 people. And I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Now, staff, go ahead.
This is a request for a rezone to include a plan development overlay for the property. They're also requesting a general development plan and specific implementation plan for building additions on the site. So here's the subject site. It has frontage on West 9th Avenue, Nebraska Street, and West 10th Avenue. It's used by Grace Lutheran Church. The surrounding area is primarily residential uses along with commercial uses along Oregon Street. So here's an aerial view of the subject property. It includes a church on the north side, a school on the south side, and then on the west side a gymnasium. And here's the site plan. So the applicant is proposing a 2-story school infill addition. It'll be between the school and the gymnasium, so they'll be filling that in. And they need that area to expand for classrooms along with daycare uses. And the proposal also includes new entrance canopies on both the east and south sides of the building. And for the addition on the south side, they're proposing a 1.32 foot setback for both the addition and the entrance canopy will be, again, 1.32 feet. Currently, there's about a 22 foot setback, which is already a substandard front setback. So they're requesting a base standard modification for that. Also along the east side, they will be proposing a canopy, which will be about 2.3 foot setback, where the building is currently in the setback at 6 feet. So for base standard modifications, they're requesting the plan development overlay, and staff supports the approval of the zone change to include the PD overlay, as that will provide opportunity to accommodate additional needs for the site, as well as accommodate the needs related to the unique layout of the property. For the additions going into the front setbacks, they are proposing a mixture of shrubs along both those additions, and that will help mitigate the impact of those setback reductions. Additionally, the canopies and columns include columns that should serve to enhance the appearance of those entrances, which you'll be seeing the elevations towards the end. They will also need a base standard modification for the impervious surface total. Right now, they're at about 60.3% impervious surface for the site, where code allows a maximum of 60%. With the building additions, there will be a total increase in impervious surface of about 3,500 square feet, coming to a total of about 63.9% impervious. Staff is supportive of the base standard modification for the increase in impervious surface, as they're still only slightly over the maximum, and they're also consistent with neighboring non-residential uses who are also exceeding that 60% maximum. For stormwater, they will need to submit stormwater management plans, and that will be approved as part of the site plan review process. They are not required to have additional landscaping, as the addition is going to be less than 50% of the existing floor area. However, the addition does extend north towards an existing residential property, so there will be a buffer yard requirement associated with that, and they are proposing a 10-foot buffer yard along with a row of arborvitae to meet that buffer yard requirement. They're also proposing a dumpster enclosure on the west side of the existing gymnasium, and that will be constructed of 8-foot tall split-face block walls, which will match the existing building, and there will be a wood gate for access. The enclosure itself meets the side yard setback requirement. However, the access to the dumpster enclosure will have a setback of about 1.26 feet, which will be in that side yard setback area. Staff is supportive of a base standard modification for that, as they are just matching an existing gravel driveway leading to it and also improving it by turning this into asphalt. So we are supportive of that base standard modification. A photometric plan has not been submitted for lighting. However, the application does state that some lighting from the canopies will spill over into the public right-of-ways along the canopies. Staff is supportive of a base standard modification to allow the spillover into the right-of-way, provided it does not increase lighting over the maximums along adjoining property lines, especially across the street. Here's the proposed layout. And for building facades, as this expansion is not exceeding 50% of the existing floor area, the code requires the addition be substantially similar to the design and materials of the existing building. So the addition between the school and gymnasium will be clad in a Cream City brick veneer, and that will be consistent with the Cream City brick veneer of the existing school. The new entrances will be identified by changing the massing and brick color and include a heavy timber canopy with a pitched roof. And the eastern facade along Nebraska Street will be altered by removing existing vinyl siding at the windows and adding new windows and creating a brick veneer. The applicant feels that these changes will enhance the appearance of the facades. And so here will be the view from the south side. So here's where the addition is between the gymnasium and the school along with the entrance. And then here's the east side with the new entrance canopy. And with that, staff recommends approval of the rezone, GDP, and SIP with the findings listed in your staff report and the proposed following conditions. A base standard modification to reduce the front yard east setback from the established building setback to 2.3 feet for an entrance canopy addition. A base standard modification to reduce the street front yard on the south side from the existing building setback to 1.32 feet for the building addition and entrance canopy. A base standard modification to allow 63.9% impervious surfaces, where code allows a maximum of 60%. Base standard modification to reduce the side yard setback on the west side from 7.5 feet to 1.26 feet for the dumpster enclosure access drive. Base standard modification to allow exterior lighting levels to exceed the maximum of 0.5 foot candles at the right-of-way line, with the final lighting plans to be approved by community development, and that the final stormwater management plans be approved by Public Works as part of the formal site plan review process.
Okay, thank you. Technical questions? Lori?
Yes, I noticed in the rezoning narrative that the school offered, it refers to existing traffic and off-site parking conditions would remain the same as currently exists. I guess, my only question is this an increase in the number of students? And if so, would that not increase traffic in the area at certain times of the day and for after-school events or others?
Can we hold that question for the applicant? Okay. Any other technical questions? Ed?
Looking at the classroom elevations, the east side and north side, I know those are kind of hidden from view for the most part, obviously, because they're kind of in the U shape of everything else. Those two at the bottom. Is there not, my point being, I guess, that the windows look a little small. Now, and I don't know if that's a matter of personal preference or me thinking back to being in school wishing that there were more windows in my classroom, or maybe they didn't need to be as many windows and I would be more focused. But I don't know. Where do we sit on the code in terms of, I know glass and brick are class 1 material. I would assume that they're meeting their materials thresholds here. I'm just wondering if there's anything here that requires a certain amount of window opening.
Our institutional land uses do not have design review standards, but through the plan development, we can address those things.
And I guess it's not necessarily my job to legislate their, experience in learning for their students or whatever. Those just strike me as really small windows for relatively large expanses of buildings. So that's just I guess my question was whether or not it met any part of our code, but it sounds like we don't have any.
Yeah, might have been a miss when we redid the code. We didn't put standards in for institutional.
Well, I don't know if it's a miss. I think we just assumed that there would be some guiding principles overall on those, so.
Any other
There can be.
Any other technical questions? If not, then I will open the public hearing. And first, I will ask for a statement from the applicant if they're willing to do so right now. Is the applicant here?
Hi there. My name is Ben Leibel. I serve as the principal at Grace Lutheran School. So in response to your question there, we will see an increase in enrollment for next school year. That would be with or without this building project. We do have a parking lot across Nebraska Street that our families do utilize, and we also have the street parking on West 10th as well. We're kind of limited as far as space to increase the size of our parking lot. There is a parking lot across on 10th from the gymnasium that is city, that when it's off hours, we do tell our families to park there. But otherwise, we're kind of limited as far as where we can go. But there would be increase in enrollment and usage as far as families coming and going.
What do you anticipate the increased number of students to be, or families?
So next year, we're looking at an increase of 30 students. So we'd be looking at serving right around 160 students. And then the plan is for growth year after year after that. Yep.
Okay. Any comment about what the window, excuse me, sir. If you want to comment on the, or do you have somebody else here to comment about the size of in that particular structure?
I'll defer here.
Hi. Eric Drazkowski with Excel Engineering. In regards to the windows, I guess that's what the architects are working through. We've done multiple schools, and my guess is that's what they have deemed acceptable at this point, I guess is what I would say. We do a fair amount of schools, so I'm sure that's been vetted through. It's something I can certainly take back to the architects to take a look at and consider, but for right now, I guess
Are
that's-
those classrooms where the small windows?
Yes, right, those are classrooms, yes. Yep.
Any questions for either of these gentlemen? I guess not. Thank you very much. I'll open the public hearing again for comments.
Jason Kramer, church president and former school board president as well. I'm going to chime in on the window part of it. We actually got a rendering that they're actually saying that there should be less windows for the schools because actually kids' attentions actually direct outside and pay attention there. I remember as a kid too, I was always looking outside. You know, something we got back as a rendering, we're like, you need to have windows, but there's actually a lot of schools now that are actually going smaller windows, if not higher up and small windows that way to keep the light coming in, but keeping the attention to the classroom too. So kind of like what Ben was saying too, we already, even without this expansion, we already have a 30 student growth already. Those students will be going either in our basement that we have an open room down there, which I mean, now there's no windows if the kids are in the basement. So that's why we have this expansion, is to be able to help continue our growth that we continue to see and be blessed at Grace Lutheran.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak to this item?
My name is Melinda Gosdick, and I live behind the church and school. I just have a general question. What kind of arborvitae, is that what it was said, are you going to put up? Because our garage is right there. So I'm just curious.
Right, the arborvitaes, those are going to be your decking arborvitaes. They're going to grow 15, 20 feet tall.
Okay. Okay, that's all I just wanted to know, because we're right there.
All right, thank you.
It'll keep the balls away, hopefully.
Anybody else wishing to speak to this item? One more time for the public hearing. Anyone else wishing to speak to this item? All right, if not, public hearing is closed. Any more statements from one of the applicants? No? Okay, commission, I need a motion.
A motion to adopt the findings and recommendation as stated in the staff report.
Is there a second? Okay, discussion. Any discussion on this item? Gosh. Okay, seeing none, then I'll call for the roll call.
Bowen.
Aye.
Ford.
Aye.
Hinks.
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
Perry,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Rob.
All right.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay, next item, approval of a specific implementation plan and plan development amendment to allow a second electronic message center sign at 2770 Westtown Avenue, which is Culver's.
Thank you.
And were there any site inspections? I did one. Couple of site inspections.
Inadvertent.
Yeah,
And I didn't stop, they weren't open.
like, I was actually there, so.
And I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Go ahead, staff, on the summary.
Thank you. This is a request for a plan development and SIP amendment to an existing approval for Culver's Restaurant located at 2770 Westtown. The applicant is seeking or asking for approval of a second electronic message center sign for the property and will be requesting a base standard modification from code section 30-28082, which states that no more than one electronic message board is allowed on a lot. Up on the screen is existing land use map and zoning map of the general area. The subject site is highlighted and outlined in blue. Site is zoned suburban mixed use with a planned development overlay. In January of 2000, the Oshkosh Common Council approved a plan development for the general area, which included the extension of Northwest Haven Drive and the creation of Westtown Avenue, with the purpose of the plan development would be to encourage large commercial developments, including big box retail, smaller outlot development, and other shopping centers. So beginning in 2000, we saw Menards development on the south side of Westtown, Weir's Festival Foods, we have Goodwill and a couple strip centers here, and other smaller commercial developments. In November of 2000, the Oshkosh Common Council approved a conditional use permit and plan development for Culver's Restaurant on the north side of Westtown. That was part of the condition with the original plan development as individual developments came forward. Plan Commission would review, and then council would grant approval for these individual projects. So in November of 2000, the Common Council approved a conditional use permit and plan development for Culver's Restaurant over here on the north side of Westtown. The base plan met all zoning requirements and did not receive any base standard modifications or variance from the base zoning requirements. Signage was not addressed at all in the plan development, so that generally means that any signage on the site would have to meet base code requirements. This is a close-up aerial of the site from last summer. The subject site consists of one parcel, approximately 1.86 acres in size, and is more or less fully developed. The site contains a 4,500 square foot restaurant, associated parking, trash enclosures, stormwater management facility, and site landscaping, and 3 ground signs. Identification sign on facing Westtown, another identification sign along State Highway 21, and then a communal sign for Menards, Festival Foods, and Goodwill along State Highway 21. We can talk about the existing signs a little bit. First, I'm going to touch on the existing communal sign located on the north side of the property. This is technically an off-premise sign, which is generally prohibited per the zoning ordinance. In June of 2000, Common Council approved a base standard modification to allow a off-premise sign in hopes that it would limit the amount of clutter and other signage along Westtown Avenue. So the council approved the location of this off-premise sign to serve Menards, Festival Foods, and Goodwill. The other 2 signs are corporate identification signs, both similar in size. The signs are approximately 25 feet tall and 120 square feet, and both signs currently contain a approximately 65 square foot changeable copy sign. In March of this year, the applicant proposed to replace the changeable copy cabinets with approximately 25 square foot electronic message center signs, or EMC cabinets. At that time, the applicant was notified by staff that the zoning code only allows one EMC per property, and the way to get a variance from that would be having a plan development amendment to get a base standard modification to allow a second EMC on the property. At that time, the applicant decided to move forward with the Westtown Avenue EMC down over here, and then seek approval for a second EMC along State Highway 21. In the application, the petitioner or applicant states in the narrative that Culver's is currently wanting to modernize their signage from the labor-intensive, potentially hazardous daily changes of the manual reader signs. I'm sure you're familiar with Culver's. Every day they have a flavor of the day, which is updated on a daily basis. They're stating that with the change to an EMC, the flavor of the day could be updated via mobile device instead of manually changing out the text each day. The applicant also lists other advantages of EMCs, such as use of graphics to promote products, potentially reaching out to a broader range of consumers, and provide wayfinding and increased safety. The applicant also states that the EMC sign along Highway 21 would only be changed out once per day and would be a static sign, just displaying the flavor of the day. So the sign along State Highway 21 would essentially be serving the same function as the existing manual copy sign that's currently there. With this being a variance type request, generally a hardship should be demonstrated as to what is unique or unusual with the property, warranting the need for a second EMC. The owner has been approved for the one or the single EMC sign, which is allowed by right, and will have the ability to utilize those additional electronic features of that EMC. In staff's view, the applicant does not make a strong case for any hardships other than the inconvenience of manually changing the reader board each day. As a comparison, had this type of request been brought before the Board of Zoning Appeals, it would be viewed that the applicant does not demonstrate a uniqueness to the lot, but rather a personal preference to the owner of the lot, which is basis for denial per state case law. Staff is also of the opinion that this request conflicts with the spirit of the plan development, which was approved for this corridor. Section 30-158B2 states, "It is not intended that the city will automatically grant exceptions or base standard modifications in a plan development overlay district, and it is expected that the city will grant only such exceptions when they are consistent and comparable with benefits to the community that result from plan development." So staff views that a second EMC would be inconsistent with the area and does not benefit the community. Zoom to this. This is a aerial showing the corridors of State Highway 21 in Westtown. Staff feels that if this is approved, it would be setting a precedent, would enable other businesses along these corridors to seek similar requests. The original intent of this plan development was to minimize the amount of ground clutter and distractions along Westtown Avenue and State Highway 21. Staff feels that a series of EMCs along State Highway 21 would add to the number of distractions to drivers, more so towards drivers heading eastbound, heading towards the North Washburn Street and Ammer Road roundabout. Generally, also when applicants seek relief from basis zone district standards, we usually see additional property enhancements that are proposed as a means of compromise. In this case, you probably would like to see additional landscaping features or something kind of offset their request. And per the submission, the applicant has not indicated any other site improvements other than the second EMC. Staff feels that the base standards for the signage in the suburban mixed-use district is adequate for other businesses to function and attract the local community and out-of-town visitors to the location. If you've driven down State Highway 21 Westtown, staff feels corporate imagery is well represented along both these highway or streets. And the public should have a general idea of what goods and services these corridors provide. So as far as other site criteria, the applicant is not proposing any other changes to site design, access and circulation, parking, lighting, on building signage, landscaping, or stormwater management, or building facades. So with that, staff believes that the proposed plan development amendment fails to meet the standards set forth in the zoning ordinance, and does recommend denial for the amendment proposing a base standard modification to permit a second electronic message center, as it is in conflict with the following criteria. The first one, the proposed development project is consistent with overall purpose and intent of this chapter. Staff feels it's conflicting with the proposed plan development project would maintain a desired relationship between land uses, land use densities and intensities, and land use impacts in the environs of the subject site. Third, the proposed architectural and character of the proposed plan development project is compatible with adjacent and nearby development. And lastly, the proposed plan development project will positively contribute to and not detract from the physical appearance and functional arrangement of the development in the area.
Okay, thank you. Technical questions to the staff? Yeah, I think.
The site has the 2 current pole signs on it. Is that permitted? That's permitted because it has frontage on both of those right-of-ways, correct?
Correct. You're allowed 1 ground sign per right-of-way frontage.
Gotcha. So in theory, and I don't think the other properties along here, maybe Community First, I can't remember, but I don't think the other ones have the double signs the way Culver's does. Unless maybe Community First has one on the West Town side.
This here is another communal sign for Menards
Yeah, I know that
Festival.
one is a
There's
group
one
sign.
right here.
Oh, there's one there.
That one?
Yeah, can you? We'll pull it up on Street View here or Google Earth.
You're doing great work today, Mark.
Amazing.
Just great work.
We have to give you a reason for having the TV in here.
As long as he's not trying to hand manipulate.
Yeah.
I know they've got theirs on the corner.
Start with
McDonald's is on the corner, you're right.
McDonald's has one on the corner.
I don't think they have theirs on the.
And if we proceed down, we have the combined sign, Culver's sign.
I feel like we're going the wrong way.
Getting there.
That building does not look like it has
Yeah,
one
the
on this
multi-tenant building does.
frontage.
Wendy's does.
Wendy's does.
Wendy's
And then
does,
Community
Verizon
First has
does
one.
not.
So on West Town, though, I guess that was more my question.
Overshot.
Yeah, they have, so Community First has one right on the corner.
They've got the one that's
Yeah. Wendy's has a
Wendy's
small
has a
monument
small-
sign right there. And then I don't think there's,
I don't believe this building has a freestanding sign on West Town at all.
I don't think Papa Murphy's
Oh,
ever
there's,
Look on the south side of West Town.
okay. Yeah. I think I'm just trying to understand, I guess, when this was approved, it was approved per the sign ordinance at the time. You note in there that it didn't receive any base code modifications when it was approved in 2000. So those signs, as they sat, or as they sit, were permitted per code with no base standard modifications under that sign code in 2000.
Correct.
Gotcha. And then just to make sure I know it does look like those EMCs are a reduction from the manual signs It looks like in your report, the first manual sign is 69 square feet, the second is 64. And then is it correct in saying that the two EMC cabinets would be 25 square feet?
Approximately, just shy of 25 square feet.
Each.
Mm-hmm.
John?
Yeah, I have a few questions. First off, maybe we're falling behind technologically with the city code. Because do we find the channel letter signs more attractive than EMC signs now? Because we're so anti-EMC signs, and I understand, I'm just asking because as somebody who has been a general manager at a fast food restaurant, it's a lot of time, and kids are not necessarily always paying the most attention, and that I can understand the injury thing because they're messing around with this thing, putting these letters in, stuff falls down. If it's winter time, there's ice and so on and so forth. I get that part of it. And I mean, maybe we need to look at our code and work on these EMC signs a little bit more, because these smaller ones like that, they aren't putting out a lot of light. This isn't a residential area. As Ed brought up, it is smaller than the channel letter sign. And I mean, again, from a management perspective, I don't have to send somebody out there to work on it in the middle of winter when you look at the front of the lot when there might be a couple feet of snow underneath that they have to tromp around with or try to shovel to get rid of, which is more labor they have to spend on it. So maybe we need to look at the city code as far as the channel letter versus EMC, especially in these kind of areas. And my biggest, how many businesses do we have in the city that have both highway frontage and frontage road frontage like this area? It's a very exclusive, small segment of the city. So, I mean, if we're setting a precedence for this area, there's really nothing else like it, where you have the highway and then businesses and then the road behind there, where the businesses are sandwiched next to the highway. So, I don't know, I'm just...
Let me respond a little bit to that. First of all, if we would have our first of all, the problems that we had with the old sign code, at least our opinion. On the staff level side, and at least with half the plan commission, we thought we allowed too much signage and too many signs in the community. That's why when we went through the zoning ordinance update process, we really trimmed that back. In my opinion, do you need 2 reader board signs on the site? No, I think one is fine on any site. Generally in the community, in this particular case, I think what you have is the signs that are along 21 serve less of a function for those reader board signs than the traffic going on Westtown, because the traffic that's functioning on 21 has a different style of, they're going to a different place than all the stuff that's coming down Westtown, which is a more local traffic, so it's going slower. So I'm more concerned with more signage out on 21 creating potentially hazard, but just contributing to sign clutter in that particular area. Now you add to it, I don't think you're going to get us to the position that we're going to support 2 EMC signs on the site. I think we had that discussion, and the code has now settled on 1 EMC sign. I understand it's at 25 square feet. So I guess that's a discussion that we're going to have as a plan commission on this particular subject, because it would set precedence again for every one of those businesses now wanting to have EMC sign on Westtown and 21. I think from our concern, we have a concern with it just getting more clutter along that area. I think the clutter looks like it does along 41. The barn doors are already out on 41. We've tried to contain it as best as possible, but it is what it looks like. So we're trying not to open that same door along Westtown. I think we've been relatively successful to date.
I guess I would just say that the businesses that are there they're actually trying to get business from 2 major roads, because they have 2 major, they're in the enviable situation of having 2 major, one that's city speeds and the other one that's coming into city speeds, but they're trying to feed in from both ways, people going through and people that are actually here in the city.
Right. Okay, well,
I'm going to take the side of signs, because that's what I used to do.
Yeah. Well, right now, this is technical questions.
And that's what we're working on.
And you have, you're opinionating too, that's okay. Lori?
Yes, so it was mentioned that there were no additional, for example, landscaping or other improvements, I guess my question is, had that been a factor where that was offered, would that be even making a difference in this situation?
Probably not in this case, unless it was extremely exceptional, but I just put that in the staff report. 'Cause generally, that's what happens. It's kind of a, we'll scratch your back, you scratch our back type of thing when you're receiving base standard modifications.
But they could, because one of the things I guess I do appreciate is that, they've made a special point that picture graphics overcome language barriers for tourists or foreign nationals and learning disabilities and education discrepancies. But I guess my other question would just be, if we're only allowing one, would they, if they preferred, be able to swap them out, the channel signboard for the EMC on West Town as opposed to the highway frontage?
They've already been approved for the EMC on West Town, so they're all set to go with that.
Okay.
And it mentioned in their narrative that it was their intent that the EMC along State Highway 21 would be static anyways, with just the flavor of the day.
Okay. I have a question about the height of the sign. I understand that the area of the EMT is less, but on the picture, it looked larger than the ultimate sign height looked larger. Am I wrong?
I dug through the old building permits for this site, and the one is 25 feet, and actually Culver's had to obtain an easement from the DOT because they were encroaching into their rights somehow. So the DOT limited their sign to 25 feet tall with a 25-foot setback from the highway's right-of-way. And then the other one is 23'6" or something like that, I believe.
Oh, okay. So DOT regulations would not permit it to go any higher than that, whether
Correct.
It's whether it's an EMT or a channel.
Yeah, Culver's is within an easement with the DOT.
Oh, okay. All right. Anybody else technical questions?
I guess you're saying the one that they want to change into this, the MC sign is going to be static. It's not going to be moving. It's just going to be hanging there and with the flavor of the day lit up.
Theoretically.
Correct.
I guess I don't understand where the distraction is going to come in from that any more than what they've already got up there.
Well,
It's going to be a smaller area as far as the sign itself, and they're only going to have the one thing on it. And they change that once a day, every day. So I guess I don't understand why it would be a distraction.
As
Well-
a precedent it potentially creates next McDonald's. is gonna-
Wendy's, McDonald's,
Mhm.
Papa John's, all the rest. I mean, I think that's the concern that staff has at the staff level, that all of a sudden you do start to look like, take Wisconsin Dells, and you start looking at the amount of sign clutter that becomes out there.
Okay.
And what sign, there's a difference between, everybody knows what's at Culver's.
Right.
You know what's at Culver's, you know what's at Wendy's, you know what's at McDonald's, you know what's there. You can pull off the highway. Now, once you get on West Town, you want to see what the specials are. There you're supposed to be maybe looking at, because traffic should be going slower on a local street like this. Should be.
Yeah.
Should be going slower on a local street, but you don't want them looking at that out on.
Okay.
Any other technical questions? Okay, I'll open the public comment, and if the applicant is here, we would allow them to speak first.
My name is Dan Lichtenwald, and I am the owner of that Culver's location. I don't know what else I can add. I think it's all been discussed by this body. The only thing that I would like to add is, it was kind of mentioned before, that site is a little unique to the area, given the fact that there are two existing signs. And we want to take advantage of current technology and upgrade that property, getting away from the changeable copy board to something a little more eye-appealing, a little more up-to-date. And we will be very sensitive to not having the Highway 21 be anything other than a static board. So we're not really changing or adding signage. Again, we're just trying to upgrade that property. And I guess for this body, if we're not allowed to have that other board, I'll most likely take that changeable copy piece down off Highway 21. Again, just for the safety of my staff. 5 o'clock in the morning when it's 40 below zero and people are changing that sign, we want to get away from that. So I understand that Culver's is a little bit unique. I don't want to apologize for that, but we are a little unique to that neighborhood. Whether or not we put a digital board up, I don't know if that's going to push the neighbors to do the exact same thing. I mean, those pieces of equipment are not cheap. So that's really all I have to say, unless somebody has a question for me.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is the approved EMT on Westtown going to be changeable?
Yes.
Scrolling? It'll be
Yes.
scrolling, and so it won't be static.
It won't be static.
No, you can't. When we adopt the new code, you can't. It can't flash. It can't scroll. So anything that's existing is non-conforming potentially. But we have a code set. Where's Mark?
Right here.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Our code does not permit scrolling, flashing, blinking, anything like that at EMCs. One change every 10 seconds is the most our code allows.
Oh,
So
okay.
6 changes in a minute. They can't have animation or anything like that on the sign, regardless of what street frontage you're on.
Okay, but there would be some changes. You would anticipate some changes on the sign?
On the Westtown sign.
On the
yes.
Westtown side. Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions for Dan? I guess not. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mark Wessel, CEO and founder of Springfield Sign out of Springfield, Missouri. I'm here representing CFS and, of course, your local operator, Dan, here. I'd like to kind of address some of the comments in the staff report, and they seem to be fairly key points here, so I'll just kind of itemize the ones I'd like to discuss. First one, I really agree that the purpose of the development plan is to encourage commercial development and business. That's what we're all here for. Second is the property has 2 pylon signs. Each of these do have a changeable message board. They're a manual changeable message board. As far as I know, they were approved by the city, and they're both legal and conforming to all standards today. There's comments that we didn't present any hardships except for a technology convenience, so I'll address that. There is an acknowledgement by the staff for the need to attract local and out-of-towner business. This is a very significant key point for a business to be viable and sustainable. We have to attract not only local existing customers, but new customers, and we have to keep the interest at all times. Next point is that the EMC being changed only once every 24 hours. This is the second one that we're asking for in a variance. Kind of negates all the technical features, and that the EMC is moot at this point. That is far from a true statement, and I'll kind of address that a little bit later. It's also stated that there's no property enhancements such as additional landscaping that have been offered to justify this variance request. We feel like we have offered some good faith here for this request. I see in here that there tends to be, or there appears to be, a fear of setting a precedent for just an onslaught of similar requests from similar businesses. And then the last comment was there were no unique attributes submitted by us about the property. A lot of these have been discussed here, and I'd like to say first off that you guys have a very good community member here. That property is in excellent condition for being 20 years old. It's very well maintained, and it has a significant amount of landscaping. So I don't see any more additional landscaping features that would be prominent out there. The property is unique in that it is flanked front and back by 2 highways. You don't see that very often. Now, I suspect even in this city it's fairly rare, and it's maybe limited only to this development. We have Westtown Avenue on the front and Highway 21 on the back of the property. The property has two nearly identical pylon signs, both a similar size, both with changeable message boards. And the city, back in the day, with the owner, saw a need to allow two signs and two message boards. This is a viable part of Culver's and that business, and probably leads to a lot of success that they've had over the years. In addressing the two thoroughfares, Westtown Avenue presents, and this has kind of been discussed here, more local or captive patron. They kind of know where they're going. They're probably more than likely local. Highway 21 on the other side is going to have not only local traffic, but out-of-town traffic. So those are the customers, customers that we want to appeal to that are potentially new customers or occasional customers coming in every now and then. Again, all this is very important to a viable business. As far as justifications for the variance or trade-off, we feel like we've made that. Reducing the size of signage for most modern current sign codes, zoning codes, is usually a fairly significant thing. Signs over the years, I've been doing this 30-plus years, continue to come down in size. So we have taken the 65 square foot manual copy boards and reduced that down to 25 square feet. I haven't done the math, but we're probably talking about a 60% reduction on both signs. So we are trying to offer that in good faith. The other justification is that we essentially are looking to make the Highway 21 sign a static sign. Not any different than any other sign that's out there. As noted, there's no additional distractions or anything that's going to be put forth by having a static sign that put up there. It already exists anyways. As far as the value and justification of these EMCs, the fact that you can put graphical content on there is pretty significant. We all survive on graphics and that kind of stuff this day and age, and yeah, there are aspects of a splash in the marketing side of things, but we found over time that it overcomes a lot of language barriers, foreign tourists, that kind of thing. We've also seen some disadvantage aspects from people with learning disabilities or that have less educational opportunities in front of them, and to respond and understand graphics better. Additionally, it enhances wayfinding, typically makes life a little bit easier than a lot of words up on a board to read. As far as the attributes of the devices, they are all programmable. It's not uncommon to see restrictions of movement or videos, that kind of thing. That's pretty commonplace in today's codes. But again, the graphics, images, brightness, scheduled events are a very big thing. Once they go through their program for a year, it allows them to have a very good schedule where they remember Easter or whatever's coming up, those types of things. And I'd like to kind of address this reducing the EMC capabilities, and therefore it's just moot having a static image. It just is not a true statement. Again, from a safety point of view, we've seen slip and falls. The people that are attending to these signs a lot of times tend to be either younger or older generations. Younger side of things, I think most of us can speak to inattentiveness, and we aren't as bright as we are today when we were younger, generally speaking. And on the older side of the equation, a slip and fall can be very, very hazardous. Breaking a bone or a hip, as we all know, as we get older, is pretty significant. So we have seen that. I don't believe they use ladders out there. I saw them out there today using a stick, but still you're looking up, you're subject to vertigo, you're subject to falling, you're subject to moving off the edge of a piece of concrete, tripping over something, so on and so forth. So the hazards are really there, and the safety aspect is there. I guess in conclusion here, there's a few other things I've seen around town. I'll probably hold on those unless there's further conversation with some of the competitors around town. But it's analogous to or akin to if you were to go through an office and update one desk with a computer and then come over here to this next desk and leave a typewriter over there for people to operate off from. I suspect some of our younger generation would struggle to know an IBM Selectomatic or a Royal or some of those kind of names that don't exist anymore. So I kind of leave it with that, and be happy to answer any questions. We believe we're in the intent of the code. These signs were up initially and are legal and conforming today, have existing message boards, and we are just trying to modernize this for the convenience and looks, and we would hope that any business could refresh who and what they are periodically.
Thank you. Any questions? Not right now, thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak to this item from the public? Anybody else wishing to speak to the item? Okay, I guess, any closing statements for the applicant, or do we, can we allow commission discussion and we give them a chance to? Is that okay?
What's our flow chart? How does their flow chart work?
Closing statements from the applicant. We're doing this, I'm sorry, the script here for the city attorney. Well, we'll see what happens then, because you've just had your chance to speak, unless you want to speak one more time.
No, we open it up one more time for the applicant for a closing comment, right? That's what we do, correct?
Okay, all right. Then,
If the owner
Dan,
wants
do
to
you
come
have
back-
anything else you want to say right
I
now?
have nothing to add. I think, Culver's has been a real good community partner with Oshkosh. We look to continue that good relationship, whether we get approved for this sign or not. Just so the body is aware, our other culverts in town has also been approved for this upgrade, as well as my other store in Fond du Lac. We're willing to invest $130,000 in these properties to keep them fresh, keep them updated, and all we ask is a little, I don't want to say cooperation, but understanding that this property is a little unique. And, I don't want to speak for my neighbors. We change our sign every day, where some of my neighbors change them once a month, once every 2 months. And we like to keep this fresh. So that's my closing statement.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, public comment is closed then. Commission, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion to adopt the findings and recommendation as stated in the staff report.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right, discussion
I
on
have
the
a
motion.
question.
Yeah.
Now there's,
We should clarify that.
Yes, I need to clarify something. The motion is to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report. If we're
denial.
following that wording, a yea vote is voting to deny this. Am I correct?
Correct.
And a no vote
Is voting to accept
to allow the
this.
signs.
And you would need
In
to
theory.
state some form of findings if we went down that path.
yeah, if we get down that path, they'll guide us on what statements. we
Well,
need.
just so everybody knows what we're voting for, because,
Yeah.
because,
Yeah,
yeah,
now-
this changes how we've done everything forever.
This confuses a lot.
It does. Let's have some discussion, pro and con. Yes.
Yeah,
Fine.
first off, I think it's worth saying that I don't think it's our job to decide if Culver's is or is not a good corporate citizen. I don't think that's the charge of this body. So I encourage you all to kind of put that out of your mind when we're evaluating this. I agree with staff in that clutter is a problem. It detracts from a sense of place. Anything that sets a precedent that may increase clutter is something we need to be worried about. I think more specific to the question at hand, as is stated in the staff report, with a variance type request, a hardship has to be demonstrated. And to me, having a location that happens to have the advantage of having these two advertising points isn't really a hardship. They're going to get one sign regardless, in line with the code and what was intended. So I'm inclined to support staff on this one.
Okay,
So I'm I'm really conflicted with this because I am all for overcoming language barriers. It's what I do, it's my career. I'm all for those opportunities to do that. However, I did take a long time to look at this and to study my little manual here that was passed out to us a couple of months ago. And I'm not supposed to make decisions based on my emotion or my feelings, and I'm supposed to make those decisions based on what the rules, codes, and laws are. And as such, I would have to go with the staff's recommendation, even though I may not personally like it.
Lori?
So as I look at the intent of the original PD was to minimize the amount of clutter and distractions, it appears that a 60% reduction in the size of the signage would be reducing the amount in terms of clutter, maybe not numerically, but at least volume. So I'm also conflicted because, they're also looking out as far as uniqueness to, some of the safety hazards and as well as the language barriers. So I'm challenged on this.
Anybody else? John?
Yeah, I'm, obviously, everybody knows I'm conflicted on this one. I wish that one of the things that they would have brought up for a hardship was their business. Because when people here said McDonald's, Wendy's, et cetera, their specials, everybody knows what their specials are. Not everybody knows what the flavor of the day is at Culver's from one to the other one across town. And people will stop if they see mint Oreo because they didn't see it at the last two they passed. And they want mint Oreo. I wish you would have brought that up, because then I wouldn't have to make your case, you would have made your case. Just something to tuck away for the future if this comes back. Again, it is reducing the sign. I think we may be slightly behind technologically, because I think all the signs eventually are good. Everybody wants to put up these EMC signs. They want to put up an EMC sign that's a picture, flavor of the day. That's it. It's a static. It's of all the EMCs that have come through us, we've never had anybody who said we want just one thing up there all day long. And I'm going to probably end up voting to deny this, and it's not because I want to deny this. It's because our job is to go with what the code is, and I think the code needs to get looked at. So.
Yes. Ed?
I'm not conflicted on this. The only reason I'm conflicted on this, though, I guess maybe a little bit, is because I've been arguing with you about this for like 15 years, and I'm going to miss it. I have no conflict on this because in form and in function, we are essentially doing, their request is to do what is there. It works within our code, within the current code, the previous code, and the only, I guess, differentiation here is that, our code allows one, but it also doesn't usually contemplate a site with these types of frontages and these types of right-of-ways adjacent to it, the way that this site does. That's the hardship. I personally believe that would serve as enough of a hardship in my mind to, in looking back to the way this was approved, probably approve a PD out of the ground that would have allowed these two EMCs. I'm sensitive to the slippery slope argument, but I think to a large degree, the slippery slope here applies to maybe 6 parcels of land in the city of Oshkosh, and they're all right in here. So these guys come back and they ask for more, then I guess that's a door that I've opened, and I'm going to have to live with that. But however it is that we wind up having to vote here, because I'm not quite sure parliamentary-wise how that works. I think Mark's going to fill us in. I will be voting to support the dual EMC signs for that reason, that it's essentially basically identical in form and function to what we're currently permitting, yet trading off by reducing those existing signs a little bit.
So in order to do that, we vote no then on this, right?
My conflict.
Okay,
We
so,
don't.
Well,
are there any other comments?
yeah, I'm going to make a comment.
I'll get to you.
We're all conflicted, and I admit, I do have emotion. I have a soft spot for Culvers, okay? I admit this. And his Culvers, other Culvers, I like them. And I do want a sign to remain on Highway 21. I don't personally care about the message part of it, but a Culver sign is vital on Highway 21. So I'm assuming that a sign, the owner is suggesting that he would take down the message part, but I doubt he would remove the Culver's sign. So that's important. That's vital. But I'm with everybody else, conflicted. It seems to be the only one that has a clear head on this.
Oh, it cleared my head too.
And a bone to pick with
Because-
Darren, but other than that.
You give me another hardship.
Because I also don't see a hardship. And I appreciate what they're trying to do, which is remove the size of the sign. That's important. So I think I'm going to be going with staff on this one, and perhaps if there's some other way out of this, they can come back and appeal if they don't succeed, the applicant. So now, how do we?
I have one more comment as well.
Oh, yes, Tom.
I'm also not entirely convinced that the sign will remain static, and I say that because we've heard that there'll be flavor of the day. But I've also heard that there's going to be pictures, and I've also heard that there's going to be other ways to communicate with the public, and that can't be done on a static sign. I mean, what are you going to do for Death by Chocolate? Today's flavor of the day, Death by Chocolate. What's the pictures going to be? It's not peanut butter crunch, mint Oreo. You can't show a mint leaf or whatever, so you either have to have a non-static sign or you have to have a static sign, and I don't believe that some of the reasonings that are in there are entirely true.
I don't think we're voting on what the type of message is. I think I'm voting
I'm showing
on,
an inconsistency in what is being said as well.
yeah, I'm voting on the EMT, not on whether it's static or moving per ordinance. I'm just voting on the.
EMTs do God's work.
After all the colors. All right. So a yes vote would be to recommend the denial. A no vote would be to basically defeat that motion, and a new motion would have to be made with conditions and any findings you would want to include. So if the vote goes, it dies, or not enough to prove it, we would then ask for a second motion, whether that be to send forward the favorable recommendation with XYZ conditions and these findings. We would then take a second vote.
That makes
So-
sense.
That's where the static would
That
come in.
makes sense.
We have to get conditions, so we have to
The
have
static
findings.
would come in.
Yeah, we'll have to
And we
change.
want an opportunity to have conditions. Static sign.
The request is for the
And that
sign,
takes
so it should be
me
a
out.
no vote, right?
The way you motion.
The motion is to approve the staff report, which is to deny the sign.
Oh, yeah. That's
So a
Yeah,
yes vote
right.
denies the
No way to do
sign.
it.
A no vote does not
This is so
deny it.
confusing.
That,
We've changed now a little bit with our new operating procedures.
Yeah.
Yes.
yes vote would be to go along with the staff recommendation. No vote would be to not go along with staff recommendation.
Okay, are we ready to vote? Okay, call the roll, please.
Bowen,
No.
Ford,
Aye.
Hintz,
No.
O'Leary,
No?
Carey,
Aye.
Weigart,
No.
Prop,
Aye.
So now what do we do?
Okay.
So what do we have?
we have 3-4, so motion denied.
Motion denied. Okay.
Now we would look for a new motion, in that we would need your findings for the motion and any conditions you would choose to place within that motion. For example, it being a static board only.
More than one change per minute.
Now we have to write the recommendation.
So basically, no.
What are we thinking?
To follow our recommendation.
Yep, yep.
We put anything on static.
Can we do this during,
Yes.
we can do this during a meeting and just legislate on the fly?
Usually you have to have findings for
We have to
These
have
findings, okay, so, I'm just saying, are we like writing conditions?
Yes, so you could add conditions just like you do on any other approval.
That's
If you
true,
want
okay,
another
okay.
condition, you can add it.
Makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense, okay.
For a example on conditions, if you go to page, that's my staff report.
Do we start with findings or conditions?
You would do both. You would make a recommendation to approve the plan development as requested with condition that only static images be shown, and find that within your staff report, there are findings listed that you could use one of those as your finding of why you want to approve it.
Can we converse with the applicant? Can we ask the applicant
Otherwise,
questions?
go to the.
Can we send this back
Can we
to you
ask
for
the
2
applicant
weeks?
questions at this point?
Definitely could. If you go to the merge one, it's got all the findings.
Just a minute.
The findings in it.
John, what is it you wanted to do?
To ask the applicant a
Go
question.
to the next. Go to your next staff report. It's going to be a little easier to see.
Okay, Darren or,
Okay.
yeah, John would like to ask the applicant a question. Is this appropriate right now?
We do not
Trying to
have an
find
active
hardships.
motion on the floor.
No, we don't have a motion. Should
So,
we have a motion?
okay, so do we need to make a motion to adopt the findings that the plan development is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, the way we typically would have to do that?
Correct.
And then add conditions?
Correct.
Okay. So,
We would adopt the findings, but then not the recommendation.
You would have to actually spell out a finding. So, for example, you could say, we recommend that this plan development be approved as proposed, finding that the proposed plan development is consistent with the city's comprehensive plan and other plans. So I'm just picking one out of the typical ones, and add a condition that it be static messages only. That makes sense.
and are these the standard?
These are our standard findings for an approval.
Okay, so do we add the standard findings here, or do we pick and
I would
choose?
just grab one.
Okay,
Say the proposed plan development is consistent with the overall purpose and.
that's, okay, that's what I was gonna go. Okay, so this is actually in the next staff report, for the merge item.
A and C.
Page.
Yeah, page 7.
Yeah, you just hit like A and C. Or
Yeah, so, I will make a motion, I will make a motion to adopt the findings and recommendation, to the common council that the proposed plan development is consistent with the overall purpose and intent of this chapter. And that the proposed plan development would maintain the desired relationships between land uses, land use and densities and intensities, land use impacts on the environment, and the environs of the subject site,
How about H?
8 conditions.
with the following conditions.
How about H, by the way?
Oh.
You don't have to put.
You're moving to
It's-
approve
we only
the
do-
as long as we-
request, correct?
Yes.
Started, all right.
So,
I don't even know what we're finding
We'll
anymore.
clean it up for you.
Yeah. And I guess the conditions would be, as stated, that the Highway 21 sign is a static sign, meaning that it changes no more than once every 24 hours, which I believe was in the request from the sign company. I don't know that are there other conditions that we talked about? Is there any other?
someone
So that's gonna be-
mentioned
so
landscaping.
that's gonna be
but I don't
my
know if that
motion.
was-
Okay, all right, there's a
That
motion.
word salad is
Then,
my motion. Whatever else you want to
Let's
condition.
have a second from somebody.
Second.
Okay, there's motion and a second. Now we have more discussion
Now
on
there's
this
an
motion.
opportunity for additional discussion, if anyone has more
Lori.
discussion.
Do we also need to add additional specific findings that the hardship or uniqueness is, the hardship is that clutter is minimized by the sign reduction in size and/or the uniqueness to the 2 streets flanking subject property? Or do we not necessarily
You
need?
can, if you want to add that, you can. It will have to amend the motion that's on the floor, but you can.
Do you accept that as a friendly?
Oh, yeah.
Second?
Sure. Yeah.
Just be dotting i's.
Okay, Tom,
With this motion, I would no longer be conflicted. Because of the sign being static, then there would be no opportunity to overcome language barriers, and therefore I would still be against this.
tricky needle to thread here, I get it.
Any other discussion on the motion? All right, voting on this motion, voting yes approves the request.
Okay.
Voting no
And
does
then
not.
you've already amended it, correct? Okay.
Okay, ready to vote?
Okay.
All right, call the roll, please.
Bowen,
Yes.
Ford,
No.
Hintz,
Aye.
Palmieri,
Aye.
Harry,
No.
Weigart,
Aye.
Prop.
No.
No?
No.
Motion is
Alright.
approved 4-3.
It still
Is it
carries.
carried?
4 to
4-3? Okay.
Good luck with that when it
I don't know if it's like a third or it's just majority.
Not sure what we've done.
We're good.
All right.
Government can be messy, but
carrying.
it works.
This is a new one for us.
It works. Okay, going on, the
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
the next item is general development plan approval
Bob was for.
for multi-use developments
It was
located
for-
at Marion Road redevelopment sites, HI and J, generally described as the intersection of Marion and Jackson. And were there any site inspections? I did. Okay, 3 or 4 people had site inspections. I will accept the staff report as part of the record. Now, staff, please present us some.
Thank you. So moving on to item number 4. So we have a general development plan for sites H, I, and J, generally described as Marion Road and Jackson. This area is part of the Pearl Jackson Marion redevelopment area. So we are located 3 separate parcels. Parcel J is at the southwest corner of Marion and Jackson. Parcel H is on the, let's see if I make sure I get these right. Parcel H is on the north side of Marion Road, and parcel I is at the southwest corner of Pearl and Jackson. So we have a mixture of zoning for these subject sites. Oh, I got I and J, or I and H backwards. The southern parcel J is in our riverfront mixed-use district with a plan development overlay and a riverfront overlay. The other 2 parcels are urban mixed-use district with a plan development overlay. They total about 5.2 acres in total. Parcel J is about 2.63 acres. Parcel I is approximately 1.41 acres. And parcel H is probably 1.78 acres. The city's comprehensive 2040 land use plan does recommend in this area as part of the center city. Again, this is part of the Marion Road Pearl Avenue redevelopment project area, which was originally created as part of TID 13 in 1998. These parcels were originally a mixture of industrial, commercial type development, and the city for the last 20 plus years has been working on the redevelopment of this area. We do have kind of some historic photos to show you, just to kind of look at the area. So this is 1937, what the area looked like. Here is the site in 1991, so this is prior to the redevelopment area beginning. You can see it's a lot of, if I can find the right mouse here, there's still a lot of the industrial large land users in that area. Here we have 2000, again, still primarily industrial users, but you can see some of the area was starting to be cleared for redevelopment. 2009, so this is after a lot of the redevelopment had began. A lot of the work done as part of the original TID district began purchasing properties and clearing them for redevelopment. And then here's as we sit in 2018. As you can see, the majority of the area has now been redeveloped, with a couple of parcels still outstanding. 3 of which are what we're discussing today. So to look at it a little bit, parcel J is currently a vacant site. I is a vacant site. Parcel H, which had a number of contaminants found on the property years ago, was a parking lot capped placed over it, as well as a kind of pre-established building pad. So this development on that parcel will utilize that existing parking lot along with that building pad. So the applicant has identified a number of base standard modifications that it would take to get this project moving forward. So we are beginning with just that general development plan phase. The applicant would then come back with SIPs for each one of these sites individually as they move through their phase development plan. So beginning with Site J. Site J is what we'll call the primary focus of the redevelopment project. It includes 3 buildings. So the first is Building 1, that is this building along the the east side of the property. It's a 5-story mixed-use building of approximately 110,000 square feet. It will include 111 upper floor residential units with commercial office space on the floors below. Something unique to this building is here it kind of looks like 2. It's actually a single building that has a pedestrian walk at grade to go underneath it, and the actual building spans above it on the 2nd through 5th floors. Building 2 is approximately another 85,000 square feet of mixed-use building. That is this building located here. It includes a mixture of 9 residential walk-up ground floor units, 29 upper floor residential units, and commercial space on the first floor. Finally, Building 3 is row home residential type development of approximately 8 units. The site also consists of about 62 on-site parking spaces and a single access point, located at the northwest corner of the property. This access drive is defined where it is because we do have a median in Marion Road, and it is kind of lining up with where that median would end. The site is about 78% impervious, which does fall below the 80% maximum impervious for our riverfront mixed-use district. Site H, located here at the southwest corner of Pearl and Jackson, that is proposed to be approximately 21,500 square foot, 2-story mixed-use building. Again, it would have commercial office space on the first floor, residential units above it. The concept plan indicates approximately 14 residential units on the upper floor. It also includes 128 off-site parking spaces. Again, it has 2 existing current shared access drives, one located here on Pearl, one located here on Jackson. It's coming in at about 80% impervious surface, which is below the code requirement of 85% for urban mixed use. Site I is 9 townhome type units. These are 3-story type units that are being shown. It also includes 91 parking spaces and 67% impervious, again below the 85% maximum. One thing to kind of call out very quickly as we look at this is parking. The applicant is choosing to develop all 3 sites as kind of a shared parking strategy. As the main focus of the largest scale development will be on Site H, Site H cannot accommodate for all of its parking needs under the current code requirements. So they're using sites I and H to offset some of that parking ask. Now, these properties are zoned riverfront mixed use and urban mixed use, which both have full parking requirements. If you jump just across the street to our central mixed use district, which this development is really kind of in keeping with what our central mixed use downtown is wanting, central mix does not require parking for anything outside of residential units. So they're exempt from commercial office parking requirements. These 3 developments, because they are not CMU, do have to provide parking. They are going to be asking for a base standard modification to lower that because even though they're not zoned CMU, this project is really a CMU urban core type development. But the applicant has provided some additional information on parking, kind of to justify why they're asking for what they are. So moving into landscaping, I guess we'll stick with parcel J to start here. The applicant does meet the building foundation and paving foundation requirements on their conceptual drawings. I know these conceptual drawings just basically kind of show trees and shrubs, doesn't get into the specifics of planting type, but they're showing they should be able to achieve the number of points. For street frontage, however, they are not able to. All 3 of the parcels, the applicant is going to be asking for a base standard modification related to street frontage landscaping, but we'll get into that a little bit later. Similarly, for parcels H and I, they are meeting foundation and paved area landscaping, deficient in street landscaping. Unique to parcel J is they are also deficient on our yard landscaping requirement. Our yard landscaping requirement is really that one that says based on your floor ratio, how much building you have, this is how much yard landscaping we have. With this being a dense urban multi-story development, they need a little over 4,000 yard landscaping points, which is just not feasible on this site. They're reaching at about 1,000 points. And I bring up that comparison to a CMU zoned property Because again, if this was a CMU zoned parcel, there would be 0 yard landscaping points required of them. Our urban core areas do not require yard landscaping, as this falls just on the west side of the street and is riverfront mixed use. Providing 1,000 is really about 1,000 points over what a traditional urban style development would be required. So they're far below the code requirement, but they're above what a traditional development of this style would require. There have been no stormwater management plans or sign plans provided at this time. Again, this is just our general concept plan. Those plans will follow. No lighting plan is provided at this time either. Again, we'll take care of that during SIP. So we're going to talk a little bit now about some anticipated base standard modifications. The applicant knows they're going to need a number of base standard modifications. Staff wants to discuss them at this time, but we're not going to recommend approval of any base standard modifications because as this development kind of settles into its final form, we'll handle the exact base standard modifications request at this time. But we want to kind of have that concept discussion of here's what it's looking at to get a development of this nature approved. So the first is a setback reduction along the corner of Marion and Jackson Road. This has a radiused corner, not a traditional 90-degree corner on a parcel. In doing so, as they try to have that street-oriented building as we prefer in our downtown urban core, they can't really fit the building all the way into the corner because you had a radius setback. They are asking to reduce the setback at that corner. It's from about 10 feet down to about 4 feet, so they can achieve a more true corner-oriented type building as we would prefer to see. Staff does recommend approval of that type of variance. In our central mixed-use district, we want to push buildings to the corner. We want this to be an urban development, so we really want that building pushed as close to the corner as we can. So we'll handle the exact SIP, the exact base area modification during the SIP, but in general, we do recommend approval of that type of development in this area. The second is a ground floor. Mixed-use buildings in our riverfront mixed-use district require 70% ground floor commercial with 30% residential. With the 3 building types the applicant is proposing on Site J, they're coming in at about 55% commercial, 45% residential. The reason that ratio is landing on that is they're providing some different housing types of what we would traditionally see. They have a traditional river-oriented building in this area. Well, this building is providing something that our downtown doesn't have, those walkout residential type single-family units. Objective H 1.2 of the 2040 Comprehensive Land Use Plan, which is just recently approved, said we need to encourage that variety of housing types. In this situation, we feel this variety of housing type is something we don't have in the area, which is why we're supporting to change from that 7:30 ratio to more of a 50-50 ratio, because we're providing something truly unique to this area. Next, they're anticipating a parking base area modification, which we touched on a little bit. The applicant's providing 281 parking spaces, or about 1.15 parking spaces per unit. They've identified a couple of reasons why they feel this is adequate. This development includes a lot of what they're calling micro studio type units, so smaller units, not units that are intended to have a large parking load like 2 or 3 bedroom apartments traditionally would. They're also really focusing on this as an urban core development, something that you're in close proximity to walkability, bike ped type of activities, as well it is within the transit system. They've done similar developments in other areas and provided a similar parking ratio and found that they're actually parking even well below that threshold. Finally, landscaping, or I shouldn't say finally, next is landscaping. Street landscaping, as this is the urban style development, we're pushing, trying to get buildings to the corners, to the street. The areas that are left along our frontages in this area are mainly taken up as utility easements that can't be landscaped. So the applicant's proposing to work with the city on a private-public partnership to, instead of that landscaping being traditionally found, here along their front yard, to work with the city on all 3 sites to landscape within the median. They would take on the responsibility of the cost of installing that landscaping in the median, along with working with the city to make sure we don't have any utility conflicts or anything like that. So achieving the same aesthetic feel you would with that being along the street frontage, it just being within the median, within the tree terrace instead of on private property. In general, staff supports that concept as we're achieving the same aesthetic approach that we want, which is why we have street planting requirements anyways. So again, I do just want to reiterate one last time that although we're not recommending approval of base standard modifications at this time, we do think the uniqueness of this development really does lean itself to some base standards, but we're going to want to evaluate the exact degree of those requests as final plans come forward. That being said, staff does recommend approval. Just some more drawings here. So this kind of shows the overall parking situation for the development. And then here we do have some of the concept drawings. Again, this is just a GDP, so we don't have final building renderings. The only renderings they have for us so far are of site J, not of the other two sites. So this is those walkout residential units. This would be along Jackson. One of the things that you can't see in these, the applicant's also considering doing like a kayak launch as part of this riverfront area, which I think is unique to this development. So this is kind of looking south through the site towards the river. This would be looking between buildings 1 and 2 from the river north. So staff is recommending approval with a condition, basically that no base standard modifications shall be granted as part of the GDP approval. Rather, approval, conditional approval, or denial of each base standard modification will be undertaken as part of the SIP for each project as they are brought forward.
Okay. Technical questions. Lori?
Yes, I just want to make sure I understand. So, a couple of places, Site I, for example, where we talk about 5-story building, 9 walk-up residential units, and I'm not sure if there was reference to walk out and there was reference to walk up. So are we talking literal walk up? There's no elevator?
Okay, so for site J, where it's a 5-story building along the river walk here, they're talking about walk out units, where literally you can, they're first floor units. There's also upper floor units in those buildings, but the first floor units would essentially have direct access out the front to the river.
0 depth?
I don't know if they would have, I would leave that to the applicant to say if they have stairs or if they're true, but the intent is there that there's direct access to the river.
And so the upper walk-up residential units on the upper floors, would those be literally walk up, or would there be elevators?
Again, I would
The
defer that to
requirement of
the-
the code here,
yeah.
to have an elevator. To get a certain height.
Yeah, we'll save the questions for the applicant.
And I guess, moving on to site H, then, again, just questioning accessibility on site H and I. Yes.
Okay. Other technical questions? Tom?
So the property directly, the existing property directly to the west, already developed, how many stories is that?
Which, to the west, that's about a 4, I believe. The annex property, or Anthem, I mean?
Anthem is, I think, 4.
Anthem, I think it's 4 stories. I believe that's wood frame. Is it 4? 1, 2, 3, 4.
4 with.
That's underground, that's
That's
half-story
like
parking.
underground parking.
4 and a
It's like 4.5.
ish stories.
So, we learned earlier that you can put a 5th story on a property adjacent, which is what's being proposed here is another, a little higher of a building. My question is, across the street, the mall property, if somebody tears that down, can that then be 6 stories?
So I think what you're referencing is those CMU standards we had a while back.
Huh?
That CMU standard only applies to adjoining buildings. In terms of the allowed height here, it would be within conformance with what the code allows.
So if the property across Jackson is redeveloped, then that does not come into play?
Would not come into play. They would have to meet the standard, the same height standards for their district it's zoned.
Just trying to prevent a reversal of the Dr. Strangelove thing.
Other technical questions? I have a big one about the Oregon Street Bridge. You know, the commission went through a lot of machinations, a lot of time and effort on reconstruction of the Oregon Street Bridge, only to have it, I think, pulled by the state.
Not made a
What's-
decision. They've not made a decision.
Delayed making a decision.
What, so the state has not decided anything.
Correct.
Would this is a lot of building here, would this, rephrase this. I think the city recommended a, remember the, the alternative, but it wasn't the high bridge, I don't think. It was the high, that unmovable bridge.
No, we went with the most expensive option, the $36
We
million
did.
drawbridge.
Would this plan accommodate that decision?
It should. We're going to bring up the
Or
expert in the room.
would would we be forced into the high bridge alternative?
Kathy, turn to the right and see the amount of right-of-way that we dedicated as part of this project, so.
Large
So
right-of-way
you see that swath of terrace, that's not typical. That was set aside for in case we had to realign the bridge, correct, Justin?
Correct, yeah, we dedicated the right-of-way with not knowing exactly what was going on with the bridge. I believe development has also been made aware of the potential for bridges, some realignment or reconstruction, reconfiguring, and they will work with whatever direction they comes down the pipeline.
Well, but they're gonna be wanting to do something probably well before the state's willing to fund a new bridge.
Construction on their property, yeah.
Right.
As far as I know, yes.
Right. So I just wanna make sure that whatever we've got here, that they understand that they can work with either a flyover bridge that comes up high or.
Again,
They've
for
been
what-
made aware.
They've been made aware of the potential different options that are out there for the bridge reconstruction or realignment.
And as Darren mentioned, we set a large enough right-of-way that we hope we accommodate the various options of the bridge. We can't guarantee it, but we took a large swath of right-of-way there, hoping to anticipate to meet
Right.
what may happen.
Well, on
with
the other
bridge.
side of the river, we had the concern by the original developers, who I think are not there anymore.
Yeah, the grocery
about,
store.
the bridge
With
cutting
the-
off the view of their apartments, as it mounts. Okay, all right, I think you've answered my question, thank you. Other technical questions about this?
I
Lori.
just have one more, and it also addresses accessibility. My question is whether or not the apartments in general are looking at universal design in any way in terms of handicap accessibility with wider hallways, wider doors, roll-in type showers, or any of that. Just curious.
I would defer that to the applicant. This is still at the concept level. I don't know if they're into that level of detail on building design, but we can ask them.
Right.
I assume based on the number that were projected and then square foot that was calculated in.
Well, they'll have to meet, at a minimum, they have to meet the building code requirements for handicap accessibility. The rest of the units, that's a discussion that we'll have to have with them when they come up.
Any more technical questions? Okay, we'll open it to public comment, and applicant, please come forward if you would.
Joy or?
Hi, my name's Dan Drundle. I'm with Slingshot Architecture. We're here based in Des Moines. We're here with Merge Urban Design. Our urban development is our client and our tenant and our partner in this idea. So I want to thank you for your time tonight. Really, our process is always to engage first and reach out to stakeholders. We've had great feedback and engagement from many different groups in the city, and appreciate all of staff's input in shaping this general development plan before you tonight. So we appreciate your feedback, discussion, and approval tonight, hopefully. Just kind of, I won't reiterate things that we just went through, but overall, you guys have really hit on the strategies that we're focused on. Really, in any community that we go into, we're looking at mixed use, urban residential, increasing density of people living downtown so that they're experiencing downtown, walking to downtown things, and that whatever site solutions that we put into the place, that they're adding vitality and connection and experience to the city. We look at public spaces on the site so that people are encouraged to walk through the site and walk around the site and increase walkability. So we've really appreciated the solutions that we've come up with and are started to propose in the streetscape realm with these wider setbacks, particularly planning for the bridge, but also down Marion Road. So I think we'll be able to come up with some great urban streetscape solutions that work within this existing fabric. So we're always looking to shape the public realm that way. I'll just address maybe the first couple questions here, hit a couple high notes, and then just answer any further questions you have. As far as accessibility and elevator access, yes, definitely all upper levels will have elevator access for sure. Definitely meeting code, but also really any unit, any multifamily building over 8 units needs to meet FHA also, which is interesting because the two codes don't align actually. So our office does a lot of projects like this, mixed use urban development. So we track and map out all of the accessible routes through every unit. So really every unit will have a level of accessibility met, and then it's divided up between type A and type B units. So we follow all those very strictly. Really, I would say our team goes beyond what's asked by building code reviews to make sure that our owners are served and our tenants are served well by meeting the intent of the codes. So even with the smaller units, we're still mapping through any accessible routes. The townhome units will likely, so they'll be multi-level units, so they won't be covered in some of those statuses, I guess.
And first floor bathrooms.
Yeah, so we meet, yes, yeah. So if we're having living areas that need to be accessible and need to have bathrooms on the first floor, we'll cover that for sure. Yep. So we watch all that very, very closely, so that each condition's met. Lobbies and public spaces will meet ADA as well. So we're definitely passionate about that and achieving that and trying to achieve that in the right way to the best that we can with the codes. The bridge was brought up really early in our discussions about this site. So that was great instruction from the city and imparting knowledge to us about what had happened before we got here, which is great. One strategy that's really going to help with that is the pedestrian space, the courtyard space in between the buildings on the interior of the site will really lend flexibility to whatever that bridge solution is. So worst case, it becomes the high bridge and really kind of changes the topography next to the building. The retail spaces, the potential restaurant spaces, and residential lobby that's in one of the buildings, they're fronted to both conditions. So they're fronted to the courtyard and the Jackson Street side. So we want to do that anyway because we want to make sure to encourage walkability and pedestrian space on the Jackson side and pedestrian space internally on the site so that there are walkable loops and people can take walks through there and really enjoy that. But it'll also give us flexibility down the road. We are also setting back the portion of the building that's toward the river a little bit more than the northern portion, as you can see, to create some space in between there where it can still be a pleasant space even if we do have a taller bridge viaduct type condition next to us. So we've thought about that about as much as we can, as at least putting in motion what we can respond to. And when that does happen, I think we'll be advocates for the shortest run possible that still allows the trail to go underneath it. And we'll be champions of that when that happens. Just to put out there, this development team is investing in opportunity zones, which I think Brent will talk about a little bit on the next one. But part of that program is that to take full advantage of it, we're going to be invested in here for 10 years at least. This is not looking to sell soon or anything like that. So we want to be proponents of good solutions that are going down the road because we'll be here and owners and operators down the line. I think some of the things that we highlighted in the packet, some of our site strategies are good to note. Native plant material, low impact design for stormwater solutions will be coming in the SIP. Further development of the green space will be part of the SIP. We've already reached out about the kayak launch, and I think that's a really exciting, viable solution, and that there's space for that. Talked about street frontage a little bit and why we want to be closer to the property line. We want to hold those urban edges. We want to create some good pedestrian scale streetscape spaces. So we definitely want to be staying within property line distances, not setting back too far. So that's definitely why we're asking for that in that strategy. And then district parking strategy, we've seen a lot of success in other developments, but also just to prioritize we're always striving to prioritize a pedestrian focus and a bicycle focus and an active focus on our sites. So that ends up, at least from what we're used to in cities, deprioritizing the car. And so it's really the type of tenants that we're looking for. People who want to be part of a walkable urban city are going to most likely, and we've seen evidence of, using their cars less, prioritizing that less, and enjoying when they have days when they walk around the city, go to work, go get a meal, go to their yoga class, have that whole experience and never touch their car. So we're definitely championing that lifestyle, but we do want to provide the right level of parking that's convenient. So the 3 sites the city's worked with us on is a great district parking strategy. We have seen some great success kind of at this level. And I think that's highlighted in your packet too. And then the unit sizes, the way that the code's written is just kind of a blanket statement of two parking stalls per unit. And the unit sizes that we have really probably aren't addressed in the code quite like we're coming at it. So smaller micro units, studio units that we tend to put built-in furniture in and things like that to really make successful spaces, but very affordable and attainable spaces for tenants to get into the community at different demographic levels. And so we really value that, but it does generate households that don't have 2 cars per unit. And so that's what we're tracking there. And then the other thing is just that the mixed use strategy on the site too will allow for offsetting uses to park across the day. So we really see that a lot of residential parking is cleared out during the day, and that'll free it up for the commercial uses as well. So we're really excited to be here, very excited about this project, excited to bring it to you and move through the approval process, but we're here for any questions you guys might have.
Anybody has a question? I've got a question about potential tenants.
Yeah.
Who are you proposing to market the various types of housing to?
Specifically housing tenants?
Yeah.
So we see really a wide range of users, but a lot focused on young professionals that really prioritize living alone and not finding roommates right now. And so that's why the desire is really there to have a smaller unit that they can afford on their own, and then still have the lifestyle that they want near restaurants and near experiences. But then a lot of baby boomers too, coming and wanting to be part of that and maybe not having the...
Do you have some larger units as well?
Yeah. So our typical mix is that we have larger 2-bedroom units in about 20% of the spaces, but in this site, so I mean just in general with our developments, but in this site, all the walk-up units are going to be sized well for those kind of renter demographics. And really the building to the bottom left on site J, the units that look out on the river are going to be some of the larger units in that building in particular to accommodate some of the users that you're talking about, yeah. It'll be a more private residential building, and then the one on the right side of the image up there is going to be some of the smaller sized units.
Okay, are these market rate?
Yeah. Market rate.
Which unfortunately is getting higher and higher here. But
well, we do study it against median income, and so I think the plan is to bring some of that information to, I don't know if it'll come back to planning and zoning, but it can in our SIP submittal. We can talk about that.
Other questions? I guess not right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else wanting to speak to this development? Anybody else wanting to speak to this? Okay, if not, public comment is closed. I guess we're cart before the horse, asking if you have anything else you want to say before you've heard more discussion? Or?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Then I need a commission motion.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the state report, staff report.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Discussion on the motion. Gosh, we're speechless. This is not like this plan commission.
It's GDP, it's not.
Oh, this is a.
SIP.
I guess I'll start. This is a, in many ways, a welcome development. We've had no activity on that site for years and years and years. It's an interesting development. I appreciate the different styles of housing and, your townhome style and your, more traditional apartment, I'm gonna call it, style. So I like that. I like that the parking is interior to the development, not sitting out on the street. Vision, what else do we want to know or say?
All the question.
Ed always is, get to the punch, okay.
I'd just like to say that I really appreciate the thought that went into making that opening in the pedestrian walkway so that it is encouraging of the walkability.
Yeah, I like that part too. I'm sorry, you're Bob. Any more discussion? Okay, call the roll.
Bowen,
Aye.
Ford,
Aye.
Hintz,
Aye.
O'Meara,
Aye.
Barry,
Aye.
Weigert,
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Motion carried 7-0.
Okay. Public hearing on a proposed creation of tax incremental financing district number 36, Urge redevelopment project, designation of boundaries and approval of project plan. Site inspections, yeah, I was there. Other people look at it. I will accept the staff report as part of the record. And now, staff?
That's me.
That's staff, that's you.
All right, I think Kelly's up here too. All right, thanks. Now, as you know, we're proposing to move forward with a project plan for the creation of TIF number 36, Merge Redevelopment Project. How do we make all the cool stuff that we just voted yes on happen? Well, what we're proposing to do is we've received a request to create a tax incremental district. What you have before you is that project plan. As a quick step back, what's a project plan? A project plan for a tax incremental district is really, it's the legal and it's our rationale for moving forward and creating this district. It lays out what type of district we're creating. In this particular case, we're creating a blighted area district based on some of the findings. We also have in need of rehabilitation, mixed-use industrial and environmental remediation. Also included in the TIF plan will be types of expenditures, and that's one of the more important parts of it, a cash flow analysis, and we'll get into it in a minute. But I just wanted to set the stage for you what we'll be looking at, because as part of this project, I want you all to have your TIF plans out. Basically what we're proposing to do is move forward with tax incremental district number 36. It's a proposed 5.82 acre blighted area district located at the corner of Jackson and Marion and Pearl Avenue intersection. The proposed TID is going to overlap former TID's number 13 Marion Road. If you remember Marion Road, and we saw some of the pictures, Marion Road, the Marion Road TIF district is one that kicked all this off. It's the one that started it. Then we moved in, we overlaid TID number 21, and if anybody can remember when Five Rivers came to town and they were going to build this lovely water park resort that never moved forward, that was TID number 31. In this particular case, the city's has got a request for pay-go payments and total expenditures of approximately, and this is after, I think, about 19 years, current projections, about $10 million in project costs in this thing. Project costs include about $9 million in pay-go assistance, and we'll get into that when we look at some of the cash flow tables later. And then we always put an estimated about $200,000 in administrative costs. The project plan includes a statement listing. Most of the things that you have in this TIF plan are statutory requirements. So we have to put certain maps in there. We have to put certain things in there. We're going to go right to the TIF plan itself. So if you go to let's start off on page 4 of the plan. When we get into the summary of findings, the summary of findings is an important part of this plan. A lot of the findings in here are requirements of the statute, but there's some more important ones in here. One of it, if you look at number 1, that's that but for the creation of the district, the development projected to occur as detailed in this plan would not occur in the manner, at the values, or within the time frame as desired by the city. In doing this analysis, we always consult with our financial consultant Ehlers, and they ran through. They work with the Merge Group, looking at their cash pro formas, and in their evaluation, they examined the project cash and cash returns. From project stabilization in about 2023, that's after the buildings are up and they're renting out and they're at occupancy, through 2029, the average cash and cash rate of return without incentives. Now remember, we look at these things with and without incentives. So without incentives is 3.55%. Now you start to look at investments, especially in a business investment of this kind, 3.55% doesn't attract a lot of capital to the community. So when they come to us and they talk about getting incentives and creating a tax incremental district to offset and increase that rate of return, with the rate of return that we're proposing with the incentives, that returns to 7.69%. That is not even a great return in any place. 7.69. There's some other things with the enterprise zone, opportunity zone that helps, but 7.69% is not a great return. It's a return that we've been seeing on a lot of TIFs that are coming through. So a lot of our TIF plans, whether it be Washington, whether it be the beach, any of the residential adaptive reuse projects are coming through with low cash and cash rates of return. Now, when you said before market rates are going higher, well, it's because the market rates aren't high and the construction costs are almost at an all-time high right now that it's hard. It's hard to make a project make sense. That's why we use TIF in this particular case.
I'm sorry, Darren, did you say that the 7.69 does include and factor in opportunity zone tax credits? It does not.
No, we're just looking at the cash flow. It's just the cash flow, right, Todd?
That's right.
If we go over number 5, based on the foregoing finding, that we're declaring this as a blighted area district. And then another one, number 11, the plan for the district is feasible and in conformity with the master plan of the city. If you look at some of the commentary in the staff report, we say that I think our land use plan calls for center city development. This qualifies, or it meets our intent of having center city development. It's also consistent with the Marion Road guidelines that we worked on back in, what year?
1998.
1998. So it's been around for a while. Going through the TIF plan itself, you're going to get into a number of maps showing existing conditions, existing land use. Again, those are all requirements. You have an equalized value test. That's just saying you have X amount of area or X amount of value that can be in TIF. We're well under our TIF cap, because I think we'd be at 488 million is our TIF cap. With the increment, we're at 147. So we have a lot of room to create TIFs and for our TIFs to grow. Another important page would be section 17, page 15. That kind of lays out the public improvements that we're contemplating as part of this. We included the Jackson Street reconstruction rehabilitation just in case we needed that. We don't really have an expense associated with it at this time, but we wanted to put it in there as a potential expense down the line if we needed to participate in any way, shape, or form in the future. Probably the biggest part of this one and this particular request would be the cash grants. That's the development incentives that we're contemplating as part of this, the pay-go payments. Then we have the admin costs and professional service costs. The next page, page 17, which is the merge redevelopment proposed land use. Well, that just kind of shows what Mark just went over with the GDP proposal. It just shows what's happening as part of this plan. Non-project costs, nothing really there. Now you start to get into the cash flow analysis is on page 20, on page 21. 20 shows when the value is being added on, and they're going to add as part of this project cost about almost $26 million worth of value is going to be added. That's the increment that's going to be created because we're creating this TIF district. If you go over to page 21, you then see when that value is added, what the increment is. You see that column, what the revenue is, and then what the tax increment is going to be generated as part of that. Now, as part of this analysis that we do, we just hold a flat line. We use the current tax rate, and we just use a flat rate. We know that it's going to vary up and down, but for our purposes, just for projections, we use a flat rate. We know it's going to change a bit. For a pay-go, it's a little less important to us because we're not borrowing up front and trying to make a debt service. Our friends who are borrowing it, it's going to be an important consideration for them. Page number 23, that is the cash flow projection. So that shows, this is where the development incentives start to show up in the project plan. So you can see the MRO, that's the pay-go, is the municipal revenue obligation bond that we would propose to enter into at some point coming down the line. Will be a development agreement that will work with the merge group. If this thing moves forward, we'll be working with them on a development agreement. You can see at the very bottom line, the principal right now that we're looking at is about $6.3 million with about $3.5 million in interest that's added over time. That's at a 5% discount rate. Why do we put that on there? Because there's a discount rate because it's a developer-funded TIF. The developer actually has to borrow money up front, so that there's the borrowing costs associated with them generally. So we always add a discount rate on that. And then you can see, if you follow the chart across, you can see when that obligation would be completed, and that's in about 2037. What do we say? That's 19 years. About 19 years, if the projections hold up the way we want them to, and we hope that they do. Any questions on that particular? Because that's usually one that's very important. That's really important for us when we're starting to put together a development agreement. Is this particular one? Then the next pages are just kind of requirements and the attorney's letter. And then you get to page 27. And 27 is a required exhibit that we have to put in that shows if we didn't create a TIF and this project proceeded without TIF, this is what the overlying taxing jurisdictions, the Joint Review Board, would potentially be giving up. So you got Winnebago County, you got the City of Oshkosh, you got the school district, and FVTC. So it's just a straight line calculation we do based on the percentages. But then the following that is the actual merge application, the TIF application that you can move forward with. In this particular case, the city can decide to move forward on its own and create a TIF, like we've done in a number of places. Or more recently, what we've been doing is we've been getting an application in from a developer to move forward. So the developer is requesting us to move forward with that application, or move forward with the TIF creation. This is the application that's included as an exhibit in the. The analysis that we've done, the project plan that's put together, is based mostly on looking at and analyzing the application. Todd Taves is at the table from Ellers. Him and his crew were the ones who have done the analysis on this. At the end of my staff report now, We're looking at gone through the life of the district. We're thinking it's about 29. Thinking we could potentially pay it off in 19 years. As a blighted area TIF, it'd be available to be open for 27 years. We try and close them earlier, but that type of district can be open for 27 years. And lastly, we think it's consistent with both our comprehensive plan and the Marion Road/Pearl Avenue redevelopment guidelines. So staff at this point is recommending approval of the project plan and boundaries for TID number 36 as requested. And Kelly and Todd, what did I leave out?
That was pretty comprehensive, Darren.
Good job. Did a good job.
My last one, so I'm tired. No.
You have anything to add right now?
No, not right now.
Technical questions? Now, it's not, I guess technical question is not Plan Commission's function to look at the economics of this thing. We're just saying that this meets the requirements of the comprehensive plan and.
The Plan
It's
Commission over the years has yes, their role, the role that they've actively taken as a Plan Commission is looking at the project plan and determining is it consistent with our comprehensive and local plans.
Yeah.
So if we're proposing a TIF in an area of the community, say we're going to do an industrial park in the middle of an area that's residential, you'd be looking at it from that standpoint and going, it doesn't make sense, so we shouldn't be moving forward it. We've relied heavily on the Common Council to make that decision as a council
Right.
on some of the cash flow development agreement, things like that. It's all part of the plan, so we can have some discussion, but we've always wanted you to focus on.
Yeah, but that's not our particular function. Okay, technical questions, other technical questions. Lori?
I think someone else alluded to this earlier, but if this is like 1 story higher or taller than Anthem, where we state that that this is going to increase values in the surrounding area, I guess my question just would be, would Anthem consider having a building that's 1 story taller than they are and potential view interference? Would they look at it the same way?
I haven't heard anything from Anthem, the folks on Anthem on this proposed development.
So like if they have, for example, on their 4th floor, an increased rent rate, I guess the question is, and then someone builds higher and blocks that, would that then devalue?
I wouldn't think so. I mean, you have the same issue going. I mean, the rent is, they're still going to rent up, and I think they still are going to have. Do we have the rendering that shows the? You are going to have some impact along this line. There's no doubt. There's going to be some impact because you're going to have building there. So we naturally knew there was going to be buildings built along the river, and we weren't going to maintain them at one floor. So you still. Now this one doesn't show. Mark, go back.
To the west, you can see.
Yeah, just go back to the overhead view. No, yeah. So you still, I mean, so yeah, you're gonna. They're not gonna have the view down this way, which is probably partially blocked by City Center at some point. But you still do have good. Other than this wall, you still do have good perspective out to the river. So yeah, but there's definitely one side of that development's going to have some impact.
Other technical questions? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing to anyone that wishes to speak on this. Anybody wanting to speak on the public hearing on the TIF district? One more time, public hearing, TIF district. Okay, public hearing is closed. Commission, we need a motion.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Is there a second? Second. All right, motion and a second. Discussion. I noticed that TIF districts are overlapping.
Correct.
And somehow that all ends up working out well.
We'll work that out. No. Now, what happens is, yes, so you have TIF over here, you have a TIF over here. So now all the new value that's going to this other TIF
Right.
All that new value is going to go to TIF number 36, and the other ones are froze. So they maintain their existing value, which there's probably not much because it's all owned by the redevelopment authority, so there's probably not much value there.
Oh, okay.
But, yeah. So
Okay.
all the new value goes to the new district.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right, ready for the vote? We'll call the roll, please.
Ford.
Aye.
Hints.
Aye.
Palmieri.
Aye.
Perry.
Aye.
Weigart.
Aye.
Crop.
Aye.
Motion carried 6-0.
Motion
Director,
to
no.
adjourn.
Any
No,
direct is required.
no. Hold on, give me 5 minutes yet, hold on.
It says no action required.
We're not to the adjournment yet.
I know I tucked you out with that sign. All right. So, plan director's report. Subdivision regulations. We've started the process of updating the subdivision regulations. We formed an internal review group on that. We're working with East Central. We got some technical assistance from East Central to update our subdivision regs. Our subdivision regs are from sometime in the early 90s. They are not updated for state. There's been some statutory changes at the state level. So we want to make sure that our code gets adjusted accordingly. So over the course of the next 4 to 6 months, we're going to be working to adjust those. We do have one model picked out. It's the Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission's model that's updated with the new state code. So we're going to look at that and kind of tailor it to our own needs. What we're looking at, and that'll be number 3. Same thing with the air zone. We consulted with Mead and Hunt to do an overlay or to do an update and analysis of the county's air zone. They've done all the mapping. We're ready to start working. We're ready to start coming up with some recommendations to formulate to update the code. And basically what we're looking at from this committee is we do form ad hoc working groups. I can't talk right now. Ad hoc working groups as part of this. So I'm looking for 1 or 2 members that would like to serve on these ad hoc advisory groups to reach the subdivision regulations and the air zone. So if anybody's interested, I know
It's 2 different groups?
2 different groups. Again, it's not going to be a lot of work. I'm thinking maybe 4 or 5 meetings at most for either of them. So if anybody's interested.
Subdivision.
You interested in subdivision? Anybody else interested in air zone? Oh, it's fun, air zone. Air zone going once.
Well, I'll do Arizona.
All right. Anybody else? Lori? No? Nobody else? Nobody else? All right.
Oh, maybe, but Tom might photo, and some of the other people that aren't here.
Well, I'll put out the question on an email. So for right now, schedule in Michael for the subdivision regs and Kathy for the air zone update. We did add one other thing, Kathy. This was at your request, kind of, to put it on the report. This is on the Lake Shore Master Plan process. I sent you out that email attachment that Ray had sent out last week. I didn't make copies. So was there something you wanted to
No.
say?
I just wanted to make sure the Plan Commission was aware of the, and I did go to the Parks Board meeting last night. It was an excellent meeting, and so thank you for getting this out to me.
Yeah, and what happened? in
Our
that-
input will be on these second Monday meetings. I don't see that the Plan Commission has a role, an official role, until it gets down to rubber stamp time.
That's correct. So if you want to participate, you need to
If we
show up.
want to participate actively, we need to go to those meetings as individuals.
That's right, and really our role, you know, again, from the Plan Commission standpoint, we've already determined that there's a park there, and, you know, just from a past experience, we've always let the Parks Board kind of, you know, the Parks Advisory Board figure out how a park should actually develop. So we've kind of, you know, same thing we do with TIFs. We looked at it from a land use standpoint. Okay, there's a park here. Is it consistent with the land uses in the area? But you're not incorrect.
Okay.
So that ends that. And now, Bob.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Don't go anywhere. We have